In a discussion of using grains in a dog food formula, one grain in particular has been misinterpreted over a number of about 2 decades, and that's corn. And let's discuss corn and using corn as a dog food ingredient. First of all, there's nothing inexpensive about corn, or there's no reason that corn should be chosen or used because it's going to save money or some other type of ridiculous reason. When you're trying to build the very best pet food, that doesn't even enter the equation. What you're looking for is the best ingredient to use. So let's talk about corn, and let's separate the facts from the fiction, because there's a lot of them about corn, and so let's get to it. For instance, corn is a very low protein ingredient. So it's about 7.9% protein. 7.9%. So when you hear people say corn is a cheap source of protein, well, it's not even a source of protein at all. So that's a ridiculous statement that doesn't make any sense. Dismiss those types of statements, and whoever said them, dismiss anything else they may say. Number two, corn isn't very digestible. That is ridiculous. Corn is the most digestible grain in dogs than any grain ever tested. Scientific research done on dogs using several grains, including stuff like millet, rice, wheat, corn, fed to dogs in a cooked extruded form just like Comfy has in it, showed and demonstrated that corn by far was the most digestible. I'll give you 3 of them just so you know. The digestibility of corn by dogs in a kibble is 89.3%. 89.3. That is phenomenally high. Compared to wheat, 60.7%. Huge difference. Rice, which you would expect to be the highest, no, it's the lowest. 56.3% of the rice was digested. What matters when you're feeding your dogs, you're paying good money for the dog food. If you have something that's highly digestible, like the corn is, you don't have to use as much in the formula in the first place, and you don't have to feed as much as an owner to get a healthy body weight condition of the dog, just like you're after, just what you're craving. It's been demonized unfairly, but it was done not for scientific reasons. It was done for a marketing reason, and I'll tell you a little bit about that history. Back in the early 1980s, some West Coast USA dog food companies, one in particular, where wheat is grown very, very prevalently, and these were smaller dog food companies trying to get started, found ways to make their dog food have wheat in it instead of corn. So they would exclude corn and use wheat. Well, wheat, of course, was more plentiful in their area and cheaper in their area. They didn't mention that. They simply began to prevent how corn was causing all types of problems, wasn't very digestible, etc. One of the examples one of the founders of one of those companies used to me directly, told me, is that, when you yourself eat some corn, like corn on the cob or something, and the next day you use the restroom and you look in the toilet before you flush it, and you see all that corn in your stool, you know you didn't digest any of that corn because it's not digestible. Well, it sounds, real enough if you don't really think about it. The truth is, corn has a husk or a outer coating that is a natural, non-digestible, fibrous part of the piece of corn. Doesn't weigh very much. It's not much of the percentage of corn. And yeah, that doesn't digest. It acts as a natural, almost like a fiber that moves the ingested through the system easily. And you do see it in the stool. But the other 89–90% of the whole weight of the corn that was there is gone. It's totally digested. So it was a kind of a catchy way to get people to think, well, yeah, I do see that, and, a little bit gross, but truth is, corn is extremely digestible. The scientific test that was done demonstrated that beyond a shadow of a doubt. Another thing, you see a lot of pet food companies that are big name, scientifically based pet food companies, some of which veterinarians recommend one particular brand scientifically recommended heavily for years. And it has corn in it. These people didn't put corn in it because they felt like that would help them have a less expensive dog food. They chose corn because of its quality. We may think our product that has corn in it also is better than their product, and we do, but we're not criticizing them for using corn. In fact, I would criticize people for using wheat, which is far less digestible than using corn. Corn doesn't cause problems that people say it does. Let's talk about corn sugar. People talk about all the sugar in corn because they've heard of high fructose corn syrup. Well, high fructose corn syrup is made from the starch of corn. It's not because corn has a bunch of sugar in it. It's actually chemically changed from that starch to sugar. There is a lot of starch in grain. Wheat has a lot of starch, corn has a lot of starch, and you can convert that to a sugar. It doesn't mean it had sugar in it in the first place. That's a misnomer. So understand that. In fact, the amount of sugar that is in corn is far lower than the amount of sugar that is in many and most other food ingredients. Corn is only about 1.9% sugar. A lot of people like to see ingredients like carrots, etc. in dog food and think that's healthy, that's better. Well, carrots have about 17% sugar in them. So if you're going to make an educated decision about ingredients in a pet food, it's important you really be educated and not simply read misnomers or old wives' tales or marketing information from other pet food companies or things that have been repeated over and over and over for 20 years that suddenly have become believed, even though they're as false today as the first time they were uttered. Corn isn't a bad ingredient at all. In fact, let's talk about the allergies of corn. People think, well, corn causes a lot of allergies. I don't want to use corn. No, the truth is this. First of all, most food allergies are associated with the protein ingredients in that food. Veterinarians know this, and it's an absolute fact. Secondarily, most allergies that dogs suffer from are environmental. They're not even food-related. Great majority of them. Of the ones food-related, most are protein-associated, like from the chicken or from the lamb or etc. And the ones that are associated with a grain in the food, the number one grain they're associated with isn't corn, it's wheat. That's a proven fact. It's the absolute truth. So there's not a lot of allergen problems associated with corn. Some people have repeated that over and over again enough times that others have begun to believe it. Don't believe it. Stick with the facts. Corn is an extremely healthy ingredient. Let's talk just one more thing. The American Institute for Cancer Research in the year 2004 did a study, a very long-term excellent study, and that Cornell University sponsored that study, and they did it on whole grains like corn and other grains, and also on some vegetables like broccoli and spinach, apples, fruit, bananas. And they were trying to determine the health benefits of these food ingredients. And the results of this test gave a score of healthiness for each of these things tested, each of these food ingredients. And in that research, they rated the antioxidant activity of these various foods. And just to give you an example, because this is important, spinach rated 81, apples 98, broccoli 80, bananas 65, and corn 181, over double the nearest item to it, which was bananas. So, folks, when you've got research like this done by real scientists, you need to pay attention to it.